start. So, welcome everybody to our pre-Pesach Kimberley Zoom. It's lovely to see a minion at least, and we've got some interesting things to talk about. So first off is going to be Richard David. Tell us where you're speaking from, Richard, and your Kimberley connections.
Hello, everyone. Ricky David here, and I am the son of the late Bob and Lorraine David, who now lives in Cape Town, and lovely to be here with all of you.
Thanks. Trevor?
I'm in San Francisco, by the way. I think I...
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Trevor?
Right. I'm in London, literally 3 minutes from Paddington Station. So anyone who's ever flown into London has probably had to pass my house. I've been here, been in London since 1966. I've been in Britain since 62. I suppose I left Kimberley in 57 to go to university, but I left South Africa in 62.
Thanks. That's okay. Thanks, Trev. Norma, unmute.
Okay. Hi. Well, we left, Milton is coming back into the picture, sorry. We left Kimberley in 1959. Milton left in 57, I left in 59. So, and we really haven't had that much contact, but so it's good to see. But unfortunately, most of our generation, many of our generation are around still in the 80s now. And we live in Los Angeles. And we actually moved to Durban for many, many years, and we've been here in the States since 1986.
Brilliant, thanks. Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon, married to Mervyn Toube, Toube, depends on where you live. I'm originally from Uppington, but lived in a little town about 30 kilometers away called Camus until I was 7. My father was quite a well-known rugby player. He played for Griquas, and he was chosen to play for the Springboks. But just before they started their test, he broke his toes. So that was the end of that, but continued to play rugby for a long time. He was known as Knowles Solomon or RP Solomon. We moved to Bulawayo when I was about 7, because I didn't like the fact that I was the only child in the whole school who had to wear shoes. Everybody else went barefoot. So they moved to Civilization, and that's where I grew up, but have lived in various parts of the world. Mervyn and I are now in Tampa, Florida, having left Cape Town in September to come and live closer to our children. And that's the story. Mervyn is watching on the big monitor now, so he's out of view of the camera, but I'm sure he'll come back and say a few words.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, and I'm Mervyn, Sharon's other half. I don't know, better or worse. And my memories of Kimberley are of two sorts. One, living in Bulawayo, we were we were regularly up and down the railway line to the Cape, going through Kimberley, and Nate and Hilda used to often meet us at the airport and take us, at the railway station, take us back to their house and clean us up and feed us and put us back on the train. And then I also remember meeting Alex and his wife, whose name escapes me at the moment, Salkinder. My dad was very fond of the two brothers, and in the course of these travels, we met Geraldine and her mom and dad and Theodore, and so we knew all of the family. My enduring memory of Kimberley, besides growing up with the Hendler children, Lorraine had gone already, but Herbert and Owen and the sister whose name also escapes me, and very dear family, and my mom and dad enjoyed being with them. And of course, Ricky David has been a long-term friend of ours, as have the brother Anthony, late Anthony, and Lorraine, that we saw a lot of in the years we lived in Cape Town.
Thanks a lot. Michelle.
My name's Michelle Walt. It was Otis. I'm the daughter of Solly and Sheila Otis, who had the bottle store in Kimberley. We live in Toronto now. We used to live on Poole Street in Kimberley, right next to Dr. Peril, our family doctor, which was very convenient. And I left Kimberley in 1973 to Cape Town to study. And in 79, we moved to Toronto with all my brothers, with my brother and my sisters.
Brilliant. Hilton.
Hi, I left Kimberley to go to Wits in Johannesburg in 1970 and eventually moved around to a few cities in South Africa. Left from East London to go and live in Israel for a while, went on to a kibbutz for about 2.5 years with my family, came back to South Africa to Johannesburg, and then in about 23.5 years ago, we moved to Vancouver, Canada, and have been here ever since. And we have a family of my daughter, my son, and 5 grandkids, all living within about 30 minutes of us.
Okay, that's lovely. We've got all the Toube family's stories on the website. So if you're ever going to look at it, you'll see it. Now, we're very heavily infested with Toubes this afternoon. So Daphne, your turn. Okay. You're good to go.
I'm Daphne Gillis Toube. I now live in Cape Town, and my claim to fame is that I've just turned 90. So I must be one of the oldest members of the group that regularly listen to Geraldine and enjoy every single thing that we hear.
Thanks. Well, let's move on to Yvonne then, another Toube.
Hi, everyone. You've heard most of the stories from Mervyn, my brother, but those train trips down to Kimberley and hanging on for a few hours, I can remember staying, maybe we stayed over once, but the Hendler, 2 lots of Hendlers, and the Cresswell, that's your family, and the Frank family, we knew everybody, and we're always, with my mother especially, always in touch with everyone. My lasting memory of Herbert Hendler in his big house was that he would lock the door and tell us that he could play the piano. And he had one of those pianola, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
With a scroll. And he played he put that on and pretended that he was playing the piano, and we would be listening outside the door, not allowed to come in, and then he would say, how was my playing? So those are some of the mad memories I remember from Kimberley, but we have subsequently been through and past Kimberley, and of course the shul has always been a monumental site, so I hope it stays.
Thank you, Yvonne. Morris.
Hi, I'm Morris Klavansky. I'm coming to you from McKaysville, Mineral Bluff, Georgia. I live in Boca Raton, Florida, 50-50, and I left Kimberley in 1983 after the last production of Fiddler on the Roof. I left for Cape Town, lived there for a few years, and then went to live in a kibbutz in Israel. My wife, she was coming from the States, and she found me there and brought me back. So I've been here 35 years in Florida, and between Florida and Georgia now. My sister's still in Israel and my brother's in Cape Town.
Lovely, thank you. Salkinder, which Salkinder have we got with us today?
It's Cyril.
Hi, Cyril.
Hi. Hi. Am I up to speak?
Yes, yes.
Hi, I'm Cyril Salkinder. I left Kimberley in 1996 and I've settled in Cape Town for about 26 years. And the whole story is on the web for anybody to read. I don't want to bore anybody.
An amazing story of all his sporting prowess. And also Cyril found the bench from the Baronial Street Synagogue, and we've got a picture of that, we will have, so that's wonderful too. Yeah, thanks, Cyril.
Pleasure.
David Levinsohn.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. I muted you by mistake because you'd already unmuted yourself. You're very quick on it. There you
hear
are.
me?
Yes.
Okay. I left Kimberley in 1954, a long time ago, and went to study pharmacy in Durban, then spent a couple of years in Johannesburg. We went to Durban and immigrated to Los Angeles in 1978 and have been here ever since. Luckily, my 3 children and 3 out of the 4 grandchildren all live here, as does Norma and Milton. So we have moved the family from Kimberley to LA.
That's amazing. It's wonderful when families move en bloc, like the Odises and the Kleins who went to Melbourne. David and Shirley. Okay. Are you ready to unmute and tell us about yourself? Yeah, that's it.
We're still in Kimberley, so we're not one of the visitors to this to your web. Let's say one of the very few left, and fortunately, we still have, as say, Friday night services in Toube. We have 3 of us, sometimes 4, and sometimes 5. It just depends. And we've been around a little bit, but we came back for 6 months. So that's been an awful long 6 months. We came back in 1960 for 6 months, and we're still in Kimberley.
Fantastic. Now, where's Eli? Is he just gone?
I'm here.
Okay, Eli.
Yeah,
Lovely to see you. Without Eli, we wouldn't have a website. So welcome,
thanks,
Eli.
Thanks, Geraldine. But I just want to say,
oh dear, you've frozen a bit.
I've frozen. Yeah, I just want to say I'll be listening in as long as I can, but it is quite late for me. And it's always lovely to see all these Kimberley people. I have been to Kimberley, but I'm not from Kimberley. I was born in Cape Town, lived in Joburg, and live in Perth. So that's my story, and it's a pleasure to see Geraldine with all her flock.
our flock, Eli. We do this together. I'm going to come to the others I haven't done, I think, afterwards, because I know that Barney's in a bit of a has to leave. So I'm going to now ask Barney to talk to us and tell us whatever you want to tell us, Barney.
Thank you, Geraldine. Good evening to everybody. I'm Barney Horwitz. I have two first cousins in the team here, Mark Hazard and young Jonathan. Nice to see you guys. Yes, I still live in Kimberley, and David and I, David Allen, we share effectively the top job in the community. I'm the chairman and he's the president. So I always said, if you've got three Jews together, you've got a massive committee, and that is very true. So we are here. I've just been listening to all the introductions. I'll share a couple of anecdotes with you. I noticed the first speaker came from Camus. Camus is a little town the other side of Uppington. My great memory of Camus was as a young lawyer. I did a divorce there, and we settled the divorce with an electric lawnmower and an amplifier for the TV aerials. never forgotten that. Geraldine's father, Noel Kretzmer, was a physician for many years in Kimberley. And I recall my late father choked on a cabbage and couldn't breathe. And Noel saved his life. He turned him upside down, literally, and squeezed out the cabbage. And my father lived for another 20 years. Michelle, I remember your family very, very well. Your late father, Solly, and your mother, Sheila. And in fact, one of my first jobs when I came out of the army in 1972, I worked for them at Otis Bottle Store for about 2 months. Eli, you said you've been to Kimberley. Well, you owe us another visit. And should you come, I can promise you a front row seat in shul. And are you a Kohen or a Levi? Or
No,
just
Israel. Just the common garden variety Israel, one.
Shlishi. Shlishi's for you.
Okay, you just got to get your airline working again so that we can get from Perth to Johannesburg.
Johannesburg, yeah, that's it. And I think it was Geraldine who commented that this call is infested with Toubes. And that reminded me of another incident that I had in South Africa. We have things called land claims, where there are communities who were forcefully removed from pieces of land, and they're entitled to claim them back. And I did a land claim, and the statement, it was for a place called Sydney on Vaal, which was a very famous alluvial mine, and it was established by Sidney Mendelssohn. Sidney Mendelssohn was the son of the first rabbi of Kimberley, and the major claim of the claimants was that the land was infested with diamonds. And when I spoke to the then owner of the property, he said, I can live with that infestation. So we're talking about Kimberley, and I know that Mark is going to give you a window into the clothing trade in the city right up until 1990, the early 1990s when he left. What are we doing in Kimberley for Pesach? We're doing what everybody else does. We are having shul on both nights. Unfortunately, during the day, we're a bit thin on the ground, but both nights, there are, to the best of my knowledge, 2 seders on the go on both nights. One of them I'm hosting, and young David and Shirley will be joining us on both nights. Look forward to seeing you. And Pesach is a remarkable festival because it unites Jews around the world like no other festival. Yes, Rosh Hashanah, big festival, but Pesach, we have the Seder, we recite the legend, and it is just a wonderful time for family and friends to get together, and we will be doing so. So yes, that's what's happening at Pesach. Otherwise, we're still surviving. We're around here. It is challenging. We have a lot of issues with our cemeteries, but our shul is still more or less pristine, and we use it regularly. We are there every Friday night, and we use it for all the chagim. We are there. So that's what's happening in Kimberley. All of you, if you come to Kimberley, we've got room for you in our shul. COVID is not a problem because social distancing is absolutely not a problem. We have 314 seats, and we never really exceed 20 people, so no problem. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody who'd like to ask Barney anything or say anything to Barney before I move to Mark? So thanks, Barney, for filling us in. And if we think of things, we'll put them in the chat, or we'll ask you. Mark, if you're ready, this is your moment to talk to us.
I am. Good morning from Los Angeles. I'm the oldest son of Monica and Derek, and I live in Los Angeles with my wife and kids, as well as my two brothers and my sister. So we're another one of those families that didn't leave en masse, but certainly left at different times and came to the same destination. I worked in the family business, in my lady fashions, until we liquidated the business in 1994 and moved to Los Angeles. My parents, if you want to know the little history about my lady fashions, started it in the early 60s in what was Gowie's Corner. And I remember the building well, because as kids, a big treat for us was to have tea at John Orr's with my granny. And we used to sit on the window ledge at Gowie's Corner and wait for the bus to take us back to Lodge Road. They then moved a block up the road where they opened what was in those days a state-of-the-art ladies department store. There was nothing like it. It had air conditioning, there was piped music, they sold cosmetics, there was a hairdressing salon. It was a sort of full service. Being in the clothing business in Kimberley was interesting because, as you've heard, Kimberley served a huge hinterland, so to speak. And it was a big center for farmers, and the farmers used to come into town. They used to go to the co-ops. They used to go to the various markets where there were cattle auctions and drop their wives off in town, and they used to come shopping. Another interesting thing I remember this when I was thinking about it early this morning was, can you imagine you used to call up a dress shop and say, I'm a size whatever, and I'm going out and I'm looking for some dresses. So we used to pack up a bunch of dresses, put them in a packet, and we had a fleet of bicycles, and we would deliver all over the city. People would select what they want, we'd pick up the next day and put it on their account. And we used to do the same thing. We used to pack up boxes and send it to wherever.
On Apro.
Say again?
On Apro.
On Apro, absolutely. Right. It's unheard of. Can you imagine doing that? That sort of thing doesn't exist today. So those were wonderful years. They honestly were. It was wonderful in the sense that I had a very close relationship with my parents. I was involved with them, and I was there till we basically liquidated and moved to Los Angeles. There were a lot of, the Kimberley community had a lot of people in men's and ladies' clothing. You know, I think of the Schlesers, Willys, Gershowitz had a business, so did Solja Lufowitz. And I think the Charlins also had a clothing business at one stage on the Market Square, I think. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure there are many more people in this group that go back further than I do. So that's really the story of my ladies. It certainly was an institution in its time. My dad was a big character. He certainly was a personality, and my mother was a wonderful partner in every sense of the word. And we had some wonderful years together with them in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, they both took ill and were sort of robbed of their senior days. But we're still very fortunate in the fact that I see my brothers and sisters on a regular basis, and we all have grown-up kids. Most of them are still in Los Angeles, a few aren't, and they spread all over the country. But for the most part, it's wonderful that we still are an intact family unit.
Tell me, Mark, where did you get your clothes from?
99% were all made in South Africa. You know, they were factories in Johannesburg and Cape Town. Towards the end, a small amount came sort of direct imported, like what we used to call jerseys and that type of thing. But, you know, there weren't that many chain stores in those days. You know, the chain store happened later on. You know, the big sort of Edgars and Fashinis, they sort of arrived in the 70s or the mid to late 70s, where they became more of a player, so to speak. But for the most part, the individual retailer was still very important.
And tell me, who were your best customers? I mean,
the best customers were wives of wealthy farmers who lived in the district. They literally used to come into the shop 2 or 3 times a year and stock up. And they used to buy for church was a big deal. If ever there was a funeral, the whole family used to come and get dressed up. It was a different era, a different time. But they certainly, you know, in those days, the farmers, and this is a funny thing, never ever, they used to come to Kimberley for fish, fried fish, because in those days there wasn't refrigeration. So fish was never really ever delivered to the farming communities, you know, anywhere outside of the main centers. So for them, it was a big deal to come to town and have fried fish.
Excuse me, Mark, hi, good to see you.
And you too.
I wanted to comment about this because Mervyn earlier was mentioning my grandparents, Alec, and he couldn't remember my grandmother's name, Chrissy. But I wanted to remind you, if you don't remember, that Alec and Chrissy had a line of dresses that they represented, and they used to call on your parents at Milady's Fashions in the 60s. I don't know if you remember any of that. But
you know, I don't. In the 60s, I was still wearing short pants and long socks and running around CBC like you were.
Right, but I distinctly remember Alec and Chrissy coming with their Alec's big station wagon, you know, with the samples of dresses, and showing them to your parents at the shop. And I'm not sure if they were made in South Africa. I have a memory of or a thought that maybe he imported those from America.
I remember the name Catalina.
Catalina swimsuits, he represented those, but I don't know if they sold the swimsuits to the farmers' wives at Milady's. And look, the other thing I just wanted to remind everybody that your dad was a starter at the swim meets. And I think you might remember that. Nowadays they have electronics to start races, but he had a gun.
Yes,
that he
correct.
used to fire to start the races at the at the swimming galas that I participated in.
That's a long time ago.
In Kimberley at Queen's Park swimming pool.
Correct. It
now
was your
swimming pool.
Your mother taught me to swim.
There you go. Okay, well, those are some great memories, and I remember your dad so well.
Yeah, so
That's great. Now, we really need the story of the Horwitz family. You know, it's such an important family in Kimberley.
well,
And we
Barney and
don't-
Jonathan have got nothing to do. Tell them to do it.
Well, I think everybody needs to contribute, you know. Jonathan can do some of it. You know, you've been in Kimberley longer.
That's good.
Yeah, so I think, you know, get together and decide who's doing what. Start by filling in the questionnaire on the contact page, because that gives you your framework of who the parents, grandparents, you know, and the children and the brothers and sisters. And we've got the framework. Then you can find pictures and develop the story. It's not hard. It's quite easy, and it's very appealing. Now, Annette's shop was that in near Chapel Street, and that was first of all the Evelins ran.
Evelins.
It was Harry and Phoebe Evelyn, and then Harry suddenly died very young in 1954, and they sold it to Minnie Gershowitz, and then she ran Annette's. Is that what you remember, Mark, too?
I do not remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
Mark's too young.
I am too young. I'm the whippersnapper in the group.
Yeah, you're a whippersnapper.
David, what did the Schlesers do?
Ellie had a retail clothing business in Jones Street for years and years.
Schlesers Silk Store.
Before that, they were in Fan Road. It was his mother and father, and it was basically a bridal shop.
Next to David's father's business.
Yes, next to David's father's pharmacy.
Silk store.
Schlesers Silk Store. It's a bit of a
yes.
tongue twister.
We outfitted wedding parties, Afrikaans, the wedding parties for the Afrikaans weddings.
Mother of the
bride,
granny
of the bride, everybody. And Judas
probably the Jewish people bought their clothes in Joburg or something.
Yes, basically.
Correct.
You have Jewish clientele.
But I don't think they lived off the Jewish people.
I remember my parents looking at a rail of samples, and my mom would say, "That's a perfect mother of the bride dress."
Yes, but what about the Jewish clientele? Were they a major part or not really?
Yeah, to its extent, to a degree, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I certainly remember on APRO, you know, the box would come and you'd unpack everything, and then they'd come and collect it the next day.
We used to send hats on APRO until one afternoon my parents were on their way to play bowls on a Saturday afternoon at Beaconsfield Park, and they saw a lady getting into a car wearing a hat, and my dad said, "Oh, we sold a hat." And on Monday morning it came back. And he politely told her that they saw her leaving her house wearing the hat.
Yeah. And what are our memories of men's outfitters?
I mean, Solly Lubowitz.
Sure. And Willie Kenny.
And Willie Kenny.
And yeah, Sully on the Market Square, right?
Yeah, Sully was in Market Square.
And there was Truworths or?
This was a chain store. But didn't Eric Gershowitz have a men's outfitting business?
Yes. Was it called McCullough and Bothwell or something?
Yes.
An old English firm.
We used to buy our school blazers there.
Yeah,
that's right.
Willie Kenishevsky had a clothing shop for many years also.
Started working for Marquis, and then Marquis was Solly Lubowitz.
That's right.
Solly and Willie Kenny worked for Marquis, and then he moved in and they opened Kenny's. And then the other clothing, Willys rather, the other Jewish clothing businesses, all the Hotzes, the Kaplans, I'm just trying to think, the Krolls, all had being in the clothing business.
And then there were the wholesalers that they sold clothing as well, right? Overbuck and Brown and Apter.
Yeah.
The only thing the clients never sold was clothing.
That's right.
Geraldine,
Yes.
I've got to unfortunately go. Mark, brilliant presentation. I'd just like to add one thing, and it's one thing that I'm very proud of your father in this respect. When Derek passed away, we had a memorial service for him in the shul after the funeral had taken place in Los Angeles. And in fact, we had around 60 Black people who came to the memorial service. And I engaged some of them in conversation. And they said to me, Derek Horwitz was the first man, white man in this town and probably in South Africa, who gave domestic workers credit. And he clothed us and he gave us dignity. And I'm exceptionally proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you. One more thing, when my dad had a heart attack in the early 70s and my mother was desperate for salespeople, she actually had the first non-white lady. And she got a lot of pushback in the beginning. A lot of the sort of farmers didn't want the non-white to see them in their underwear. But she persevered, and she was the first one in Kimberley to do that.
So great guy. And yeah, we will do the family history. I'm sure it's got its moments, and we'll get it out.
Before you leave, I'm sure you also aware recently of the passing of Norman Horwitz. He was also Kimberley.
Yes, Norman passed away last week.
Right.
And it's a great sadness. Norman left here in the late 1950s, roughly when Geraldine left. Yep. And he was, I think David knew him well, but he was a very popular bloke, and he was, in those days, he was a saxophonist. He played in a dance band. Very, very interesting guy. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Geraldine,
we're sorry, Barney, that your brother-in-law passed away. We send condolences. And also to David Levinsohn, whose wife sadly passed away recently. So we think of you at this time. So thanks for being with us, Barney, and I hope we will continue talking about the Kimberley heritage and dealing with the documentation and things like that. Have you got anything you'd like to say about that?
Yes, no, we'll get to that. Unfortunately, I've got to go now, but I will say that Jonathan Joseph belongs to the community because his father gave him away at my bar mitzvah.
Well, we're very happy to have Jonathan as part of our team and our heritage team, and we all want to help you, Barney, and to take some of the load off your shoulders and help you to make sure that everything is preserved in the way you would like it to be.
Thank you. Okay, good night, everybody. Pesach Sameach to you all, and we'll see you the other side of Yom Tov. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Barney. Now I'd like to ask Norma and Milton if they want to talk to us about some Kimberley people. It's
okay. Am I on?
Yes, you're on. You're on.
Okay. Actually, before I do that, two things came up in these discussions. One is that Norman Horwitz was actually married to David, my first cousin, in Cape Town. And so that was sad for us. And then talking about my ladies, I mean, we remember back when they were in one location and the other location. So, and we actually have had a lot of connection with Mark here before his parents died, because they were the most amazing people. They were incredible to my parents when they lived in Durban, and they just were an amazing couple. So I just wanted to note that they were really special people. But the story I wanted to tell you was Lucille Friedman. Now, I don't know how many of you remember Lucille. Lucille's Milton's sister. And the family was Ginsberg, Solly Ginsberg, who was very involved with Schule there. And it was her grandson's bar mitzvah last weekend. And we had a dinner here at my house of Lucille and David and Milton and I. And we had the most amazing evening. But sat here and thought, here are 4 ex-Kimberleyites sitting together and having a dinner in Los Angeles. So it was kind of, we thought about it, and it was really very special. And I thought people might be interested in that, how you can get together on the opposite end of the world.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's really good that you're all close together.
Yeah, it is.
That you can, you know, especially at this stage in our lives when things don't always go the way we want them to go.
Exactly. You know, because usually, you know, like there's a partner or a spouse, which unfortunately in this case there wasn't, but it kind of made this unique for us.
Mm.
Okay, well, that was what I wanted to tell.
That's great. So who's got some questions to ask or some stories to tell? I'm still talking to your cousin Milton, who's got the wonderful story of the Brenner girls, you know, and their life in Kimberley. That's what we need for the website.
Which cousin?
Anthea.
Of course.
Brenner girls. She's written several chapters on Kimberley, which on
Lucille and I have been, I think, discussing things for about the last year, ever since you prodded me.
Yeah.
And we'll get round to it, I promise, soon.
You know what? You know, this has to take some kind of priority. You know, we're not babies anymore. You know, we're 2 years older than we were when we first started this even. So, you know, I look back at the families that we've written about, you know, on the Kimberley website, and, you know, some of them aren't there anymore. So one has to capture it while you can. You know, we haven't got our parents to ask anymore. So, you know, your children have only got you to ask. So there you are.
Geraldine, it's Jonathan.
Jonathan.
You know, I one of the few people I think on this call that actually attended Mark's bris, which indicates something of the gulf in age between him and me. And you can see, you know, how fit and youthful he looks. And I think he's got to coordinate all his cousins. He's the oldest of his branch of the family. It's time, Mark, to exercise a bit of authority here and get them writing.
I think when we see each other in August, we'll arm wrestle and determine who does that.
By August, it's got to be done. You know, it's April now. Come on. No more arm wrestling. Get your pencil and paper out. If you don't even have to have a pencil and paper anymore. You know, you can just talk it to somebody. So there we are. That would be really good. So it's really nice to hear from you, Mark. We do want to help Barney to find all the stuff that we've got there, to digitize it, to make sure that it's safe. And I know that Moshe Silberhaft, his great friend, is also keen that he should do that. So just know that we're there to help and to facilitate and to try and make things easier for him. And your help would be great as well, to support Barney in getting Kimberley completely secure in all its stuff, you know, the records and the things like that. So our aim is to help him decide how to digitize and safeguard these things, because, you know, it's all our
very important.
Yeah, and we're also looking at the cemetery. You know, here we are all over the world. We're unlikely to visit the cemetery in Kimberley, but we have a possibility of creating a virtual cemetery where not only can we visit, but we could actually make a donation to those who are looking after the cemetery. So I would very much like to encourage Barney. I don't know whether you've ever looked at the Cape Town Community Cemeteries Board. If you look up the Cape Town Community Cemeteries Board, they have a website where you can put in the name of your relative, you'll find their grave, you'll find a transcription, you'll find a picture of the person, you'll have the opportunity to leave a stone by the grave, you have the opportunity of buying a leaf on their tree of life, and that goes to the people who look after the cemetery. So for Barney, this could be a wonderful income stream.
Sure.
And the people who made the Cape Town Cemetery are willing to make one for Kimberley too. So I'm sorry Barney is already gone, but perhaps you could mention him. Rabbi Silberhaft is also keen to follow that up. And, you know, in that way, not only do we help Barney with the physical upkeep of the cemetery, but we also have access to all the people who do want to go there and are not able to do so.
Sure, I absolutely will mention it to him this week.
Excellent, that's wonderful. So there we are. Let's wish everybody a wonderful Pesach. And but if anybody would like to say anything, there's plenty of time if you want to do that. You can put it on gallery view. You can raise a hand if you want to. So Jonathan, I didn't give you the chance to introduce yourself, but you already did. But it's really nice to have you with us if you want to say something.
Geraldine, I just want to say this, that I am impressed beyond words always by your energy and your care and your enthusiasm for this. I'm not a natural born Kimberleyite, but I am half a Horwitz. And, you know, it's an extraordinary place. We were last there 3 years ago for Ida Horwitz's wedding. It was an incredible family get-together. You know, the heritage and the importance of all this is very, very key, I think, to our memories and taking it forward. And even though I'm only half a Horwitz, I'm very, very willing to participate and, you know, help as much as possible. For those that are interested, I live in London. I live in St. John's Wood, Trevor, only 20 minutes walk from you. we must swap addresses.
Yes.
Thanks, Geraldine.
Geraldine's got my address. Ask her.
Okay. All right. So really, Geraldine, a great tribute to you and your extraordinary energy for this cause. Thank you
Well, thank you, Jonathan, and thanks for all your support. And, you know, we just want the people in Kimberley to know that we're there. You know, you are part of it. We're not separate. We want to embrace you and to help you and support you, and not, you know, and feel connected with you. So, Shirley and David, it's lovely to see you there and to know that you're hanging on in there and doing it. So, you know, we could have the Isaacs family too, you know, what about that? There we are.
Extended. We've just had our 5th great-grandchild born a month ago.
Mazel tov.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. And how's your brother, Tony?
You should know you're in London.
I know, but I don't see him. Yeah, but he's been in South Africa recently, has he?
We saw him now in February. We always make a point of going to Cape Town when he comes through. And we had a lovely couple of weeks together. And he's looking fantastic. Went to a frazzle. Lots of his white hair. I always call him Dr. Naidu, because by the time he leaves South Africa after a couple of weeks of being in the sun, but he looks well. My eldest brother lives in Cape Town and he's going to be 92 next month. And he's well still, thank God. So it's very nice. I remember everybody that's been speaking here, all their parents, Mark, Horwitz. I loved your mom and dad. They were marvelous people. And I know Trevor's parents, and I know David's parents, and your parents, and everybody that's come on the Klevanskys. Betty Klevansky was an incredible person. She almost single-handedly helped me with one of the bar mitzvahs of my kids. And she was a fantastic worker on the Women's Zionist League and everything that we did. So everybody that appears, it just brings up a picture of all the people that we were very involved with over the years.
Now I see, that's lovely, Shirley. It's really nice to hear from you. Kevin is on. Now, Kevin is one of Daphne's children, and I think it's wonderful if somebody from another generation is there, because, you know, it's all our 80-year-olds is a bit much, you know, we really need to see. So Kevin, have you got a picture as well? It would be nice.
No, sorry, I don't have a picture, but can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Well, as you say, I'm the son of Daphne and the late Harry Gillis. My mother's, as you say, Daphne Toube. But the thing that I want to mention on, as you're saying about the upkeep of the cemeteries, is thank goodness all our family also in the same area again in Cape Town in Sea Point. And when my father died, we then got to the situation of what tombstone do we put on his grave. And we had a big discussion. And because coming from Oudtshoorn and now living in Cape Town and being our children of our father, who was very practical, extremely practical, we all decided that we must have a very low tombstone. And everyone looked at this very low tombstone when we unveiled it, because it's just his name, and that's it. And the reason why we decided on this low tombstone was not because of cost. That was not to be involved in. The whole thing was, we decided that because there was so much desecration and violation of the graves, I'm sure there is all over the world, non-Jewish and Jewish cemeteries, that we would have a low tombstone that is easy to upkeep and very easy to maintain, but not easy to break. You cannot break a low tombstone. So this is just something that I want to bring to mind to everybody, that when, please God, in the long future, they do have someone in the family who passes away, you do not need a high tombstone, you don't need a fancy tombstone. A low tombstone will do, because then it'll be there in the next 10, 20 years. Whereas anything else, anyone will go and vandalize. So I don't know what anyone wants to add to this, but that's my uptake on it.
Well, thank you, Kevin. That's interesting. Yeah. I want to just excuse myself for a minute, because I want to get my camera so I can take a picture of your faces. So just carry on talking. I'll be back in a second. But unmute if you want to talk.
Mark, Jonathan, I'm so nice to hear all that good stuff about Derek and Monica.
Yeah, it brings back a lot of good memories.
Yeah.
It certainly does.
Must have made you very proud.
Yes, it certainly does.
Okay, yeah, I've got it.
I've got to tell everybody on the call though about the time just before your wedding, when I walked into My Lady Fashions to be told by you and your father that my hire car in Johannesburg had been stolen, and they were putting the entire cost of the car onto Derek's credit card. It caused a few interesting moments, but fortunately all's well.
Yes, we're still talking to each other.
Exactly.
Okay, so Norma and Milton, just get your faces nice into the picture. Norma's got to go a little bit back, so we'll see all your face. Okay. Sometimes nice just to have this picture. There we are. That's fine.
Dean,
yes.
May I just make one comment?
Yes.
Your recent history of the Baronial Street Synagogue
yes.
was absolutely fascinating. It really was the background of the people who came, the Greeners who came from Lithuania, Latvia, and all those places. It made a tremendous impression on me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I want to congratulate you on all the effort you put into it and the background that you managed to achieve and incorporate with it. It really was a pleasure to read.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. Also, I made the heading the Baronial Street Synagogue because the other heading was the Memorial Road Synagogue. And I didn't like the idea of saying the Memorial Road Synagogue and the Greener Synagogue. Do you know what I mean? Even though it was known that. And then I found the name, and it was Ronnie who said, well, what does the name mean? You know? So we did some research on what Linus Hatzedek means.
That's right.
And then the extraordinary thing was that Gwyn Schwerer had the key to the building, and she didn't know what building it was for, and it was given to her grandfather who opened the building. And then Cyril, who's here, said, oh, by the way, here's a bench from the synagogue, you know. So you just have to start, David, and then the story grows, you know.
I remember my dad took me there. I have no idea why.
Yeah.
On occasion, he would take me to the greener shul, as he used to call it, and he mumbled something about it, but I can't remember what it was. But I have no idea why, because we weren't very religious and not big shul goers, but from time to time he took me to the greener shul. And his parents came from Riga, so I assume that was one of the reasons.
Well, not necessarily, because they're Rigas in Latvia, and
Right.
the Latvians were a bit more posh than they
Yeah.
didn't like to think of themselves as greeners. Although, as Gussie
you know,
Haberfeld said in this interview that he gave, he said, and by the way, we didn't think of ourselves as greeners.
Yeah, he did mumble something about that. I can't remember, but I know he wasn't thrilled about it, but we went there for some reason. I don't know.
Now, the other thing about the, what was I going to say about it? I've forgotten now, about the greener. Oh, yes, Gus, in this interview, they had transcribed, he said, we lived in Bloemfontein Road. And where we were living in Bloemfontein Road, it was like a Jewish ghetto. And I'm thinking, I don't know Bloemfontein Road in Kimberley. Never heard of one. I looked it up on Google Maps. There's no Bloemfontein Road. And then looking on the map and seeing where Baronial Street is, because he said, then there was this Mrs. Cohen who had a plot of land, and they built the shul, that he meant Bultfontein Road. And
Yes.
probably the person who's transcribing it had never heard of Bultfontein Road, so just thought he said Bloemfontein Road. So there's a mistake in that. So it's Bultfontein Road, and that makes sense. And then he said there was this chap who had the dairy, and he had a bit of a cheder at the back. Now, I think that must have been old man Mareski, Jack Mareski. He had a dairy.
No, I think the Jacobsons.
The Jacobsons that built Haddison Park.
Yes.
Aviva and Dan's father.
I think that he was.
Now, I know he had a dairy because he was called Creamery Jacobson in my day.
Yes, but I
And
think
one of the big things about the Greenwich was when you had Yortzeit, because
that's right.
All the city people, it was in the town, and you had the services for your Yortzeit were always held at the Greenwich. That's where you went, because of the other shul was only Friday night and Saturday. So but any other night of the week you went to the Greenwich shul for Yortzeit. And particularly, of course, when there was a death in the family and you had you spent the year saying prayers, that's where you went. You went to the Greenwich shul and helped make up the minyan.
David, at one stage, I remember there were minions in both shuls, and there was a little bit of a verribbel.
It was a verribbel because it came to a head during Matzner's day, because he felt it was unfair that he had to travel to town for services during the week, and he didn't want to, and there was nobody in the other shul. But at one stage, there was a bit of a competition between the two, but I don't recall services, a daily service at the Memorial Road Synagogue. And then, of course, the other thing which nobody mentioned, is towards the end, Goldie Mel took over the shul, and he was the one who ran it in the last few days before it was, and then it was rented out, as you put in, to Trevor in those days, which was directly in front of it. And subsequent to that, it was sold, and the person, Barney might come up with it, the person who took it over, they pulled up the floorboards because he thought there were diamonds under the floor, and he ruined it. And then, so as a result of that, it was sold to a man called Duplessis, who demolished it and extended his Vermeulen's. His hardware store has now taken it over.
Well, I mean, there were diamonds under old buildings in the city. I mean,
that's right.
Cyril,
they used to watch the ground.
Especially the ones that were put there for convenience sake.
You mean the diamonds that were put there, or the buildings?
Diamonds.
Yeah. Because Cyril, you said every time they rebuilt your Salkinders, what happened?
When we used to dig, my father used to get a digger, and most of the diamonds were where the foundations were built, because the foundations, as you know, are not easily accessible. So when the buildings were demolished, most of the diamonds were found in the or below the foundations. And
it's right on the edge of the big hole.
Right on the edge of the big hole. I mean, our house was about 150 meters from the big hole, and that's where we found most of the diamonds.
Now, what I want to know is, were you supposed to do this, and were you allowed to keep the diamonds, or did De Beers pounce on you?
How it worked was, we had to get a registered digger, and we did a 50-50 split, and he had the license, which was legally allowed for us to dig, and he provided all the equipment, and the diamonds had to be sold to De Beers or declared, which we did, and we took them to Neville Lunt, who was a diamond cutter. He had a store at the big hole, and he cut all the diamonds for us, and we could obviously keep them. They were cut diamonds. And it was actually quite exciting days to see what came out the ground and what was there and what we found. I mean, all the relics, old bottles, shoes, and whatever. It was quite a sight to see what was underneath all these buildings.
Very good. And it's very good that you did that. Yeah, Shirley?
The Beers used to supply the schools with gravel. And Ivor Brown found a diamond in the gravel that was put down in the schools. I think he had to give it back to De Beers, but they gave him a percentage of the value when he was still a schoolboy.
And it was like sometimes black gravel also. I remember you had little, I remember the Handlers in their house in Lodge Road. In the back there, they had, don't know if you remember this, Ricky, they had sort of black gravel in that place at the back, and there were little garnets in it. We used to call them rubies, and we used to go picking up what we called rubies in this black gravel. And I didn't know at the time, and I'm assuming that the Handlers did know that house of 7 Lodge Road was built for Ernest Oppenheimer, and that's the house where Harry Oppenheimer was born. Did you know that?
I didn't. I do remember the house. I don't remember that detail.
Yeah. Does anybody remember that at the time? Was that sort of known at the time? I can't remember the Auntie Hilda or Uncle Nate ever talking about that.
You know, I heard stories about that because we grew up next door at 9 Lodge Road.
Yes.
So we definitely, that was definitely a rumor we knew.
You knew, but also you must have been your grandparents must have been colleagues of Ernest Oppenheimer. Were they involved in diamonds?
You know, I think the late Barney Horwitz was. I don't believe he was actually. He was more into ostrich feathers and the stuff, but he may very well have been until the Great Depression came and sort of wiped them out.
As a matter of interest, that house, which was, as you say, was the Oppenheimer's house, was designed by Great Batch in Timberland, the architects. But Great Batch was the designer, and according to a rumor, it was one of the most notorious bad debts that they had, the design of that building.
Because he also designed the synagogue.
Designed the synagogue, yes, he designed.
And he designed Bonus's house, which is number 10 Lodge Road, the big one, the big green, you know.
That eventually was bought by John Orrs.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Good.
So, Mickey,
all right.
They had the house on the corner of Lodge Road. They subsequently bought Fanny Brown's house, Mickey Oppenheimer. Fanny Brown's house in Lodge Road.
Which was Benny Brown's house?
Benny Brown started off in Fanny and Benny started in Rendlesham Road on the corner. And then they moved around the corner into Lodge Road, and they subsequently sold. That's right, and they subsequently sold that house.
So we had the Dutch gables in the front. It was.
Yes, and they had a tennis court in the back, and that's the only time I ever played tennis with a Wimbledon star.
Yeah,
Prue Macmillan used to play there on a Sunday afternoon with us.
Excellent. So not bad. So that was Benny Brown. Ernest Oppenheimer or Nate Handler, and Barney Horwitz, Barney and Polly Horwitz. So
that's right.
Speaking of courts, you know, I don't know if you all remember, there was a squash court at 75 Milner Street.
Yes, I remember.
Which is Louis David built when he came back from the war. And
I used to play there regularly.
Well, he had a squash club there. And I recently looked up 75 Milner Street on the internet and found that it's now a lodge. And the squash court has been turned into a luxury room. And so that was a little bittersweet for me. I was wondering if the squash court was still there, but it's been...
They put in some windows.
It's been repurposed.
Guest house.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not there anymore.
Well, those were the days. So thank you all. Has MDT spoken to us? Is that Mervyn? So I think he did. So good. Well, have a lovely Pesach and keep, you know, write your family story. We've got Mervyn and Hilton's family story. Got Cyril's. We've got Trevor's. We've got Daphne's. So, you know, if you want it, but have a look at it. What I want to know is how many of you have looked at the website? Have you looked at it? Yeah, put your hand up if you looked at the website. Okay.
I read them. I get the.
Oh, David prints it out and reads it.
No, but that's a newsletter. That's not
the
the website.
Newsletter. Don't you go to the website?
No,
I thought you had.
Oh, once.
Naughty boy.
Well, you know, if you think the newsletter's interesting, first of all, there are 48 newsletters on the website. Secondly, there are about 100 families. There's a story about Kimberley and the Spanish flu, and it's the story obviously about the Kimberley Jews in the Second World War and about the Union of Jewish Women. And, you know, there's a lot, if you like the newsletters, you'll like the website. And every time I write a newsletter, it's full of links that you just have to click and go to the website. It doesn't, you don't have to start thinking about it. You just have to click it and you get there. So all I'd like to is enjoy the website, you know, because to me, the ultimate aim is the website, because that's the repository. That's where the stuff is organized and stays, and you can find it, you know. All the rest is a bit ephemeral. So enjoy the website, and hopefully we'll meet again soon.
Can I say something?
Yes, Trevor.
None of this would happen without Geraldine. She's phenomenal. I've always known that she was phenomenal. She's proved it over and over again in all sorts of areas. But for this one, I think we should all be enormously grateful for all that she's done.
Trevor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your sister asked, but your father, was it? Your father used to rent, when he first stayed, he was a tenant of my grandmother's.
How do you mean rent?
When he first came to Kimberley, he boarded with her. Him and Jack Sussman.
I thought he and Norman Weinberg shared digs as well.
Well, I don't know, but I know that Jackie Sussman always told me that your father he and your father were with my father's mother.
Okay, well, tell me about this boarding house. Where was it?
Wasn't a boarding house, it was an ordinary house. But they lived in what they called Kimberley North, Tapscott Street. That's you know, behind, next to the old cemetery in that area, and that's where most of the Jews lived at that particular time before they moved up into the other part of town. But they all lived just off Transvaal Road.
It wasn't because she was left a widow.
She was left a widow.
She was left a widow, so she had a few lodgers. You know, the ones that came to Kimberley and needed a place to stay.
Because my dad had to leave school and start working, you know, in order to help support.
David, what about writing your dad's story? You know, because once you've gone, nobody's going to write it. You know, it's up to you. I mean, I can't write it.
Unfortunately,
I only take what I get. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, I don't know where he came from.
No, we don't.
I don't know where he came from, because his passport said Romania, and I said, I never thought you came from Romania. I never asked him where he actually came from, and he said it was a good place to come from in those days. So I don't know.
Well, it could have been Romania.
We never found out where the very Jewish name Alan came from.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
have no idea where Alan derived
The
from.
Browns, of course, we know all about.
Okay.
On my mother's side of the family.
Okay. Well, look, if you want it memorialized, then send it to me. You know, if not, I can't drag it out of you. I'm trying, but I can't. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and lovely that you've all been able to get together, and hope we'll do it again soon. So
thank you, Geraldine.
And
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you so much, Geraldine. And we're going to get together.
Okay, good. All right, so I'll end it for all, and then